Hello, howdy, and how you doing? Welcome to another episode of Crizzy Books. I'm Crizzy, or Criz, but only my homeboys call me Criz. And today I'm going to be talking about the short story, or novella, if you will, At the Mountains of Madness by HP Lovecraft. I've enjoyed my fair share of HP Lovecraft stories in the past. I haven't read everything. Obviously, there's like a million of them, but I really enjoy his writing. He's, the father of cosmic horror, and I just think that for the time that this came out, I love how original that it all feels, even today. And you know what HP stands for, right? Huge penis. But At the Mountains of Madness is known as one of his best stories ever. At least that's what people say. But I've been putting it off for a long time because of, I think, its length. I prefer his shorter stuff. Most of his stories are like 30 to 50 pages long. This one's significantly longer than that, about, I don't know. I read it on my e-reader, so I'm not totally sure on the page count, but it was definitely over 100, maybe like 150. It's more novella length, which is outside of what I'm used to reading of his. I know that this story is highly influential, especially in movies and the horror genre. It just has a lot of praise and notoriety. But I guess let's talk about what this story is actually about. We are following an Antarctic expedition, a pretty large team of researchers and scientists and explorers, and they're embarking on a journey to look at rocks and to take core samples and do a lot of explorer stuff. This story is written and told through an account by geologist William Dyer. It's like he's writing in his diary about his experience and the things that he saw. There's several smaller teams, and they're all split up. There's a lead team that's ahead that's led by a man named Lake, and they're digging for samples. They discover some really weird things, like these slates with weird markings on them that seem really, really, really old, older than any type of recorded history, but even like dinosaur history, like hundreds of millions of years old is what they're speculating these things are. They also discover mountains that are higher than anything that they've seen so far, higher than Everest, the Himalayas, all that. Soon, Dyer and his team get a radio transmission from Lake that they have discovered these giant dead things. They're kind of like these large pod type creatures, vegetably, just big tubes with like cilia and appendages, and they have thick leathery skin and big old wings. And the weird thing is that these aren't fossilized. They still seem like they're pretty fresh. So of course, what's the natural thing you do when you find these ancient creatures that are clearly not fossils and could still be alive? You take them back to camp with you. Of course, you gotta dissect them. We gotta open these things up, and that's exactly what Lake does. And then Lake signs off for the night, and that's the last anybody hears from him or anyone else at the camp. So Dyer and Danford, I believe is the other man's name, they leave to go and check out the camp to make sure that everything's okay. Everything is not okay. The camp has been destroyed by the weather, but also by something else. Some of the bodies of these creatures that were found have been buried in the snow with weird markings around them. And then any of the other ones are just not there. They're not all accounted for. Everybody in the camp is dead. Some have been slashed open or dissected themselves. But then they find out that there's also a man and a dog missing. So they kind of pack up and grab what they can. They hop in their plane. As they're flying, they find an ancient city. They're flying over this gigantic ancient city in the middle of the Antarctic, and their minds are just blown at this point. They can't believe what they're seeing. So you do whatever you would do when you find an ancient eldritch city in the middle of Antarctica after just being at a camp where everybody was killed by something, you don't know what. You land your plane and you go into the ancient city. Duh. Then we get a very long part in the story where Dyer and Danforth are going through this ancient city and recording what they see through things like sculptures and bas-reliefs and piecing together the history of these ancient elder beings, finding out that they've been here a whole lot longer than anything else on Earth, probably before life itself was a part of actual Earth. And we get all of this other weird exposition on other beings that were here and the history of these elder things until eventually they get chased out of this ancient city by this crazy bulbous-eyed, misty shrouded monster. And that's pretty much where it ends. On the surface, this story is really, really good and really cool. I love the idea of an ancient alien species, especially not the ones that we consider today, like ancient aliens on the History Channel. These aren't gray aliens. These are large, pod-like, flying, weird, really, really crazy-looking monster alien creatures that are highly intelligent and capable of creating all kinds of insane things. They've just been around forever, most of Earth's history, it seems. And I love the idea of them being here in this one area that is unexplored by human beings, and they're still there in some form. Clearly, they have not died out. Clearly, something is still there in this ancient city and in this part of the world. And I really love the Lovecraftian lore and the mythos. And this one is full of all different kinds of things. Some stuff that I am aware of, some stuff that I'm not. Like the Necronomicon, which he brings up multiple times but never really expands, other than it's just a book and these elder things have been referenced in it. There's other races of ancient beings like the Shoggoths and the Migo, which is really cool. And there's references to other things I've never even heard of before, like the Kadath. I don't know what that is. There's creepy giant penguins waddling around this city and, other beings that are referenced. And it all is so cool. And he doesn't spend hardly any time explaining what any of this stuff is. He just kind of mentions it and then it moves on. And that piques my interest so much. It makes me very curious to learn more about this entire kind of multiverse of Lovecraftian horrors. And I love the way in which this story unfolds, the way that it's written in this explorer's journal and him giving the accounts of things that happened to him firsthand. We don't know a lot of what actually happens, especially at Lake's camp, because our main character doesn't really know. He can only give us what he saw and what happened to him. And I really like that because you have to use your imagination as to what you think might have happened. Because we never find out. We don't know. And I think that that's a really cool style of less is more. And it really makes you think about what could have happened and what these creatures are and what they've done. And like I said earlier, the influence of this story is pretty big in movies and TV, things like Alien or The Thing. Guillermo del Toro was trying to make his own version of this for the longest time. It's everywhere, and that just shows how important this story is to other people, and I can respect the hell out of it for that. If we want to talk about the writing style, Lovecraft is definitely not going to be for everyone. This was written in the 30s. And while I think that this is one of his more straightforward written stories compared to some of the other stuff I've read, it can still be difficult to get into, and I think that could be a turnoff for a lot of people. But I think that the tone of this was just so spot on. This slow, rising, creeping dread. You know something is going to happen. You know that things are going to get crazy. You're just waiting for it to happen. And in those quiet parts, there's this sense of horror that is bubbling. And you know that just around the corner, there's going to be something absolutely crazy. Now, having said all of that, I have some problems with this story. One being, it is way too long. We spend a lot of time in the ancient Elder Thing city, and it is tedious and repetitive and downright boring at times, which is a real shame because this is the third act. This should be the most exciting, and what they're doing is exciting, but it's also not because of the way that it's told to us. There's also this really weird thing going on where Dyer is able to relay to us like the entire history of the Elder Things just based on their statues and the bas-reliefs that he's seeing. And for me, it's kind of like, really? Like, he seems to know a little too much, and it's a little too specific for me to fully believe that he was able to gather that much information about them. But okay, I mean, for me as a reader, it's cool to get all of this information, but seeing as how the rest of this feels kind of based in reality, that seemed a little unbelievable to me. And yeah, at the end of the day, I think that this story really suffers from bloat and too much of nothing, really. And unfortunately, it had me really frustrated and just begging for it to get to the point and be done with it. It could have been a lot shorter, and I think if it was, it would have been far more effective, and I would have liked it a whole lot more. Overall, I'm going to give At the Mountains of Madness a 3 out of 5. Like I said, on the surface, I think the story is awesome, and I'll always love the story, you know, as a whole, but it's just too long and drawn out for me to say that it's really any better than a 3 out of 5. I think that the story does still hold up even with the kind of long drawn out flaws that it has, which is also what I love about Lovecraft, is that these stories are not modern, but I think that they still have a lot of merit and value today because of how unique the ideas can be and the way in which he can convey those ideas is done really well and in a style that I really enjoy. But what do you think? Have you read At the Mountains of Madness or any other HP Lovecraft for that matter that you would recommend? What are your favorite HP Lovecraft stories? Sound off in the comments below. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and as always, thank you for watching. Bye.